Welcome to Black Reflection, where we share powerful stories that illuminate the human experience across all communities. Today's story will leave you speechless, a chance encounter on Christmas Eve that forever changed two lives and revealed that sometimes the people we overlook are the very ones who've been holding our world together. What this billionaire discovered about the little girl going through his mail will restore your faith in humanity and show you that miracles come in the most unexpected forms. Let's dive in. The marble floors of Manhattan's most exclusive residential tower gleamed under the soft amber lighting of the lobby chandelier. At 11:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the building was as quiet as a cathedral, with most of its wealthy residents either asleep or away for the holidays. The only sounds were the distant hum of the heating system and the soft clicking of expensive shoes against stone. Marcus Wellington stepped through the revolving glass doors, his tailored overcoat still carrying the chill of the December night. At 42, he had built a tech empire worth $12 billion, but success had come at a cost. He lived alone in a penthouse that most people could only dream of, surrounded by luxury but isolated from genuine human connection. His closest relationships were with his board members and personal assistants, people who needed something from him. As he approached the mailbox wall in the pristine lobby, something caught his eye. A small figure was crouched near the bronze mail slots, moving with careful, deliberate precision. Marcus stopped, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone to call building security. But something made him pause. The figure was a child, a young black girl who couldn't be more than 9 or 10 years old. She wasn't destroying property or acting maliciously. Instead, she was methodically checking each mailbox slot with the focused intensity of someone on an important mission. Her movements were quiet, respectful, almost reverent. Marcus found himself studying her more closely. She wore a worn but clean purple winter coat that was slightly too big for her small frame, and her hair was pulled back into neat braids adorned with small silver barrettes. Despite the late hour and unusual circumstances, there was something dignified about her presence that gave Marcus pause. "Excuse me," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. The girl froze instantly, her small hands still reaching toward one of the higher mailbox slots. Slowly she turned around, and Marcus found himself looking into the most expressive brown eyes he had ever seen. They were filled with fear, certainly, but also with a maturity that seemed far beyond her years. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast lobby. "I wasn't taking anything, I promise. I wasn't stealing." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, an emotion he hadn't experienced in years. This child wasn't a criminal or a threat. She was just scared, and something about her fear touched a part of him that he thought had been buried under decades of business dealings and isolation. "I believe you," he said, crouching down to her eye level, "but it is pretty late for someone your age to be out alone. What's your name?" "Zara," she said, her voice gaining a little strength. "Zara Johnson." "Well, Zara Johnson, I'm Marcus. And I'm curious, what are you looking for in those mailboxes? Maybe I can help you find it." For a moment, Zara seemed to weigh whether she could trust this well-dressed stranger. Something in Marcus's tone, perhaps the genuine concern rather than accusation, made her decision. "I'm looking for letters from my daddy," she said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "He's in Afghanistan, and he sends me Christmas cards and letters to this address. But I can't reach the high boxes, and I don't want to miss any of his mail." Marcus felt his heart skip. "This address? Do you live in this building, Zara?" The tears began to flow more freely now. "No, sir. We don't live anywhere, really. We live in Grandma Ellie's car. But she works here at night, and she told Daddy to send mail here so I could get it. She didn't want Daddy to know we don't have a real home anymore." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. This child was homeless, living in a car, but someone cared enough about her to ensure she could still receive letters from her deployed father. The complexity of love, sacrifice, and dignity wrapped up in this simple act overwhelmed him. "Your grandmother works here?" Marcus asked gently. Zara nodded. "She's the night security lady. She wears a blue uniform and she's really nice. To everyone. She told me I could come get my letters from Daddy, but only late at night when no one would see me. She said the people who live here wouldn't understand." Marcus's mind raced. He had lived in this building for over 3 years, and while he had seen the night security personnel, he had never really seen them. They were part of the background of his life, invisible in the way that service workers often became to people of his class. The idea that one of them had been struggling with homelessness while faithfully doing her job every night was both heartbreaking and humbling. "Zara, how long have you and your grandmother been living in a car?" "Since October," she said, wiping her nose with the back of her sleeve. "Grandma lost her day job and we couldn't pay rent anymore. But she got this night job here and she works really hard. She says things will get better soon, but I know she's scared too. Sometimes I hear her crying when she thinks I'm asleep." The image of this small girl comforting herself in the back seat of a car while her grandmother cried quietly in the front seat was almost too much for Marcus to bear. He thought about his own childhood, raised in comfort by parents who, while not wealthy, had provided stability and security. He had never wondered where his next meal would come from or where he would sleep at night. "And your father doesn't know about your living situation?" Zara shook her head vigorously. "Grandma made me promise not to tell him. She says he has enough to worry about over there, fighting bad guys and staying safe. She says we can handle things until he comes home. But—" her voice trailed off. "But what, sweetheart?" "But I miss having my own bed. And Grandma is so tired all the time. And sometimes I get scared that Daddy's letters won't find me if we have to move the car again." Marcus felt something fundamental shifting inside him. Here was a child who had every reason to be angry at the world, yet she was primarily worried about her grandmother's tiredness and whether her father's letters would reach her. The grace and maturity she displayed in the face of such hardship was extraordinary. "Zara, I want you to know that you're not in trouble, and I want to help you. But first, I think I should meet your grandmother. Is she working tonight?" A new wave of panic crossed Zara's face. "Please don't get her in trouble. She's a good worker, and she needs this job. If they fire her for letting me come here, I don't know what we'll do." Hey, Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. "No one is getting fired, I promise you that. I just want to understand the situation better so I can help properly. Where would I find your grandmother right now?" Zara looked uncertain, but something in Marcus's demeanor seemed to convince her that he was trustworthy. "She's probably doing her rounds on the 20th floor right now. But sir, please don't tell her I told you about the car. She works so hard to make everything seem normal for me." Marcus nodded solemnly. "I understand. Sometimes the people we love most are the ones we try hardest to protect. Your grandmother sounds like a remarkable woman." "She is," Zara said, a small smile finally breaking through her tears. "She reads to me every night, even when we're in the car, and she saves her dinner from work to share with me, and she never complains, even when I know her back hurts from working so much." The depth of love and sacrifice that Zara described painted a picture of a woman who embodied everything Marcus had forgotten about humanity in his rise to wealth and power. Here was someone who, despite having lost almost everything, continued to give selflessly and maintain dignity in the face of overwhelming challenges. "Zara, I want to ask you to do something for me. I want you to take me to meet your grandmother. And I want you to trust me when I say that I'm going to help make things better for both of you. Can you do that?" For a long moment, Zara studied Marcus's face, as if trying to read the sincerity in his eyes. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Okay, Mr. Marcus, but please remember that Grandma Ellie is proud. She doesn't like to ask for help even when we really need it. As they walked toward the elevator, Marcus realized that his entire understanding of the world was about to change. This chance encounter was revealing layers of human experience that existed right under his nose, in his own building, involving people who had been caring for his comfort and security while struggling with challenges he could barely imagine. The elevator rose silently to the 20th floor, and Marcus found himself more nervous than he had been before any business presentation or board meeting in recent memory. Beside him, Zara fidgeted with the zipper of her oversized coat, occasionally, glancing up at him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. When the elevator doors opened, they were greeted by the familiar sight of the 20th floor's elegant hallway, with its plush carpeting and soft lighting. Marcus had walked these halls hundreds of times, usually lost in phone calls or reviewing documents on his tablet. He had never paid much attention to the people who maintained this environment. She should be in the utility room at the end of the hall, Zara whispered, pointing toward a door that Marcus had never really noticed before. She checks all the emergency systems every night. As they approached the utility room, Marcus could hear the soft sound of someone moving around inside, accompanied by quiet humming. The melody was familiar, Silent Night, sung in a rich, warm voice that carried undertones of both strength and weariness. Zara knocked softly on the door. "Grandma Ellie? It's me?" The humming stopped immediately, and Marcus heard the sound of quick footsteps approaching the door. When it opened, he found himself face to face with Zara Johnson, the night security guard he had seen countless times but had never really observed. Eleanor was a woman in her early 60s with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and intelligent eyes that immediately took in both Zara and Marcus with sharp assessment. She wore the standard blue security uniform, but she wore it with a dignity that spoke to her character. Despite the late hour and the physical demands of her job, she stood straight and proud. The moment she saw Marcus standing with her granddaughter, a complex series of emotions flickered across her face: surprise, concern, and what Marcus recognized as the particular fear of someone who had something precious to lose. "Zara, baby, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the car, sleeping." Eleanor's voice carried the authority of a grandmother, but Marcus could hear the underlying worry. "I came to check for Daddy's letters," Zara said quietly. "But this is Mr. Marcus, and he wants to help us." Eleanor's eyes fixed on Marcus with an intensity that made him feel as if he were being evaluated by someone far more perceptive than most of the business leaders he dealt with daily. He could see her mind working, trying to assess the potential threat this situation posed to her job and, by extension, to her and her granddaughter's survival. "Mr. Wellington," she said, and Marcus was surprised that she knew his name. "I apologize if Zara has bothered you in any way. She knows she's not supposed to be in the main areas of the building." "Mrs. Johnson," Marcus replied, "Zara hasn't bothered me at all. In fact, she's opened my eyes to something I should have been aware of long ago. Could we talk for a few minutes? I think there are some things we need to discuss." Eleanor's posture became even more rigid. "Sir, if this is about my job performance, I want you to know that I have never allowed my personal circumstances to interfere with my work. I arrive on time, I complete all my duties, and I maintain the security and cleanliness of this building according to the highest standards." The quiet dignity with which she spoke, even while clearly terrified about her employment, struck Marcus profoundly. Here was a woman who, despite facing homelessness, was primarily concerned with maintaining her professional integrity. "Mrs. Johnson, your job performance is not in question. From what I understand, you've been doing excellent work. But Zara has told me about your living situation, and I want you to know that I'm here to help, not to create problems." Eleanor's eyes flashed toward Zara, and the little girl immediately looked down at her feet. "Zara, you promised me you wouldn't tell anyone about our temporary housing situation." "I didn't mean to, Grandma Ellie, But Mr. Marcus was nice, and he asked me why I was looking through the mailboxes, and I had to tell him about Daddy's letters, and then— "It's okay, sweetheart," Marcus interjected. Zara was just being honest. "And Mrs. Johnson, I want you to know that there's nothing temporary about what I'm offering. This is Christmas Eve, and I've just learned that two of the most remarkable people I've ever met have been struggling right under my nose while I've been oblivious to everything except my own concerns." Eleanor studied him carefully. "Mr. Wellington, I appreciate your concern, but we don't need charity. We're managing our situation and things will improve. I just need time to save enough for a security deposit on an apartment." "How long have you been working multiple jobs to try to make that happen?" The question seemed to catch Eleanor off guard. "How did you—" "Zara mentioned that you lost your day job. I'm guessing that even with this night position, you're not earning enough to both eat and save for housing costs. And I'm guessing you're probably giving Zara most of the food while telling her you're not hungry." Eleanor's composure wavered slightly, and Marcus saw tears beginning to form in her eyes. "Mr. Wellington, I have been working since I was 14 years old. I raised my son as a single mother, and I put him through high school even when things were difficult. When he decided to serve his country, I was proud of him. And when his wife died in that car accident, and he asked me to take care of Zara, while he was deployed, I promised him I would give her everything she needed." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "I have kept that promise. Zara is fed, she's clean, she's loved, and she's getting her education through online schooling. Yes, we're living in my car right now, but that's temporary. I'm not looking for handouts." Marcus felt humbled by the strength and determination in Eleanor's voice. This was a woman who had faced every challenge life could throw at her and had maintained her dignity and her commitment to her family throughout it all. "Mrs. Johnson, I don't think what I'm offering is charity. I think it's an opportunity for someone who has already proven their worth to receive what they deserve. You've been maintaining the security of this building while living in a car. You've been ensuring that wealthy residents like me can sleep safely at night, while you yourself didn't have a safe place to sleep. That's not a situation I can ignore once I'm aware of it." Eleanor looked at him with suspicious hope. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Wellington?" "First, I want to offer you and Zara a place to stay. I own several properties, including a furnished apartment in a building just a few blocks from here. It's not being used, and you would be doing me a favor by occupying it and keeping it maintained." "Mr. Wellington, please let me finish. Second, I want to offer you a different position in my company. I've been looking for someone to oversee security and facilities management for all of my properties. It would be a day job with better pay and benefits, including health insurance for both you and Zara." Eleanor stared at him in disbelief. "You don't know me. You don't know my qualifications or my background. You can't just offer someone a job because you feel sorry for them." Marcus smiled. "Mrs. Johnson, do you know how I built my business? I assume through hard work and intelligence. Sir, those helped. But the most important factor was learning to recognize value and potential in unexpected places. Tonight, I've learned that you've been working multiple jobs while homeless, maintaining professional standards that exceed those of people with far more resources, and raising a granddaughter who displays more wisdom and grace than most adults. I know. Those are exactly the qualities I look for in people I want on my team." Zara had been listening to this conversation with wide eyes, and now she tugged on her grandmother's uniform sleeve. "Grandma Ellie, does this mean we might have a real home again, with a bed and a kitchen?" The hope in the child's voice seemed to break through Eleanor's resistance. Marcus watched as the older woman struggled with her pride, her desperation, and her love for her granddaughter. "Mr. Wellington, if you're serious about this offer, I need you to know that I don't take anything lightly. If you give me a job, I will work harder for you than any employee you've ever had. And if you provide us with housing, we will treat it with more respect than if it were our own." "I have no doubt about that," Marcus replied. "But Mrs. Johnson, there's one more thing I want to discuss with you. Zara told me that her father doesn't know about your housing situation. I think that's been weighing on both of you." Eleanor's face grew sad. "Thomas has been through so much. He lost his wife, and now he's in a war zone. The last thing I wanted was for him to worry about us when he needs to focus on staying alive and coming home safely. I understand that impulse. But don't you think he might also want to know that his daughter and mother are being taken care of properly? And don't you think he might be proud to know how strong and resourceful his family has been?" Zara looked up at her grandmother with pleading eyes. "Grandma, I want Daddy to know that we're okay. And now we really will be okay, right?" Eleanor looked down at her granddaughter, then back at Marcus. "Mr. Wellington, if you're really offering us a chance to get back on our feet, then yes, I think it's time to be honest with Thomas about everything. He's a strong man, and he can handle the truth." Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest that he hadn't experienced in years. "Then let's make sure we have good news to share with him. Let's make sure that when Sergeant Johnson comes home, he finds his family not just surviving, but thriving." As they stood in that utility room on the 20th floor, Marcus realized that this conversation was changing him as much as it was changing Eleanor and Zara's circumstances. For the first time in years, he felt connected to something larger than his own success and comfort. "There's something else I want to discuss," Marcus said. "Zara, you mentioned that your father sends letters and packages to this building. How long has that been going on?" "Since Grandma started working here," Zara replied. "Daddy didn't want his letters going to the car, so Grandma gave him this address." Eleanor looked slightly embarrassed. "I know I should have asked permission before using the building as a mailing address, but I didn't know what else to do. I wanted Thomas to feel like his daughter had a stable home to receive his letters." Marcus was struck by the thoughtfulness of this arrangement. "Mrs. Johnson, you've been ensuring that a deployed soldier could stay connected with his daughter while you've been struggling with homelessness. Do you understand how remarkable that is?" "Any grandmother would do the same," Eleanor said quietly. "No," Marcus replied firmly. "Not everyone would. Not everyone would prioritize their grandchild's emotional needs while dealing with their own crisis. And not everyone would maintain professional standards while facing personal challenges. What you've done is extraordinary." Zara looked up at both adults. "Does this mean I can keep getting letters from Daddy, even if we have a new home?" "Sweetheart, you'll always be able to get letters from your father no matter where you live," Marcus assured her. "And I have a feeling that when he comes home, he's going to be amazed by how strong and smart his daughter has become." Eleanor wiped away a tear. "Mr. Wellington, I need to ask you something directly. Why are you doing this? You don't know us, and you certainly don't owe us anything. What do you gain from helping us?" It was a fair question, and Marcus took a moment to consider his answer carefully. "Mrs. Johnson, I've spent the last 15 years building a business and accumulating wealth. I've been successful by most measures, but I've also become isolated from the very things that make life meaningful. Tonight I met a little girl who taught me more about dignity, love, and perseverance in 10 minutes than I've learned in years of business meetings." He paused, looking at both Eleanor and Zara. "You've reminded me that success isn't just about what you accumulate. It's about what you contribute. And right now, I have the opportunity to contribute to something that actually matters." Eleanor nodded slowly. "And if we accept your help, what do you expect from us?" "I expect you to continue being exactly who you are. I expect you to work hard, take care of your granddaughter, and help me remember what's truly important in life. I expect you to teach me things I've forgotten about community and family and looking out for each other." Zara suddenly stepped forward and hugged Marcus around the waist. The spontaneous gesture caught him completely off guard, and he felt tears forming in his own eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Marcus," she whispered. "Thank you for not being scary when you found me. Thank you for listening to me about Daddy's letters, and thank you for making Grandma smile again." Looking down at Eleanor, Marcus saw that she was indeed smiling, the first genuine smile he had seen from her since their conversation began. "Mr. Wellington," she said, "if you're serious about this offer, then I accept. But I want you to know that this isn't just about accepting help. This is about joining a family that will always have your back." "I can't think of anything I'd want more," Marcus replied, and he meant it completely. By the time the sun rose on Christmas morning, Marcus's world had been completely transformed. He had spent the remaining hours of Christmas Eve making phone calls to property managers, setting up utilities, and arranging for furniture delivery to the apartment he was providing for Eleanor and Zara. The apartment was in a well-maintained building just 3 blocks from the luxury tower where he lived. It had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and large windows that filled the space with natural light. More importantly, it was in a neighborhood with good schools and a park where Zara could play safely. As Marcus stood in the empty apartment waiting for Eleanor and Zara to arrive, he reflected on how much his perspective had changed in just a few hours. Yesterday, he had been a wealthy man who lived alone and rarely thought about anyone outside his immediate business concerns. Today, he was someone who had discovered the profound satisfaction that came from using his resources to make a real difference in people's lives. When Eleanor and Zara arrived, carrying their few possessions in 2 worn suitcases and a handful of garbage bags, Marcus was struck again by their dignity. Despite having lived in a car for months, they had maintained cleanliness and organization in their belongings. Zara ran through the apartment, her eyes wide with wonder at having rooms to explore and windows to look out of. "Grandma Ellie, look! I can see the park from my bedroom window, and there's a kitchen table where we can eat together." Eleanor walked through the space more slowly, running her hands over surfaces and examining details with the eye of someone who understood the value of quality and comfort. "Mr. Wellington, this is beautiful," she said, "and far more than we need." "It's exactly what you need," Marcus replied. "A safe, comfortable home where you can focus on taking care of Zara and building your careers instead of worrying about where you'll sleep each night." As they were talking, there was a knock at the door. Marcus opened it to find a delivery team with boxes and furniture that he had arranged to be delivered that morning. "Christmas present," he explained to Eleanor and Zara's questioning looks. "Basic furniture, linens, and some groceries to get you started." Over the next several hours, Marcus found himself more engaged and energized than he had been in years. He helped assemble furniture, arranged kitchen supplies, and listened to Zara's excited chatter about her new room. Eleanor worked alongside them, her natural organizational skills quickly turning the apartment into a real home. As the afternoon wore on, Zara found a quiet moment to approach Marcus. "Mr. Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart. Are you lonely? Before you met us, I mean. You seem like maybe you were lonely." The perceptiveness of her question took Marcus's breath away. This 9-year-old had seen something in him that most adults missed entirely. "Yes, Zara, I think I was lonely, but I didn't realize it until I met you and your grandmother." "Well, now you have us," she said matter-of-factly. "And that means you don't have to be lonely anymore. Grandma says that families aren't just about blood. They're about people who take care of each other." That evening, as they sat around the small dining table sharing a simple dinner, Marcus felt more at home than he had in his own penthouse. The conversation flowed easily, covering everything from Zara's online schoolwork to Eleanor's ideas for improving building security systems. "Mrs. Johnson," Marcus said as they finished eating, "I want to discuss your new position with my company. I've been thinking about what would make the most sense, and I believe you'd be perfect as my Director of Facilities and Security. It would involve overseeing security operations for all my properties, managing maintenance staff, and ensuring that all of our buildings provide safe, comfortable environments for residents and workers." Eleanor looked surprised. "That sounds like a significant responsibility." "It is. and it comes with a salary and benefits package that reflects that responsibility. You'd be working with building managers, security personnel, and maintenance, teams across the city. You'd also have input on policies and procedures that affect people's daily lives and working conditions. Mr. Wellington, I appreciate your confidence in me, but I want to be clear about my qualifications. I have 20 years of experience in various security and maintenance roles, but I don't have a college degree. I've learned what I know through experience and on-the-job training. Marcus smiled. Mrs. Johnson, in my experience, the best employees are those who combine practical knowledge with strong character. You've demonstrated both, and if there are specific skills or certifications you need for the role, we'll provide training and education support. Zara looked up from her dessert. Does this mean Grandma will be the boss of lots of people? It means your grandmother will be in a position to make sure that workers are treated fairly and that residents feel safe and comfortable, Marcus explained. She'll be helping to create the kind of workplace and living environment that she would want for herself and her family. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, absorbing the implications of what Marcus was offering. Mr. Wellington, this is more than I ever imagined possible, but I want you to know that if you give me this opportunity, I'll work to earn it every single day. I have no doubt about that, Marcus replied. But Mrs. Johnson, I also want you to know that this isn't just about work. What happened last night changed something fundamental for me. I've been successful in business, but I've lost touch with what success actually means. You and Zara have reminded me that real success is about building relationships, supporting community, and using whatever resources you have to make life better for the people around you. As they talked late into the evening, Marcus found himself sharing stories from his own childhood and business experiences that he had never told anyone. Eleanor, in turn, spoke about her son, Thomas, her pride in his military service, and her hopes for Zara's future. I want her to know that she can be anything she wants to be, Eleanor said, watching Zara color at the table. I want her to understand that circumstances don't define you. Your choices and your character do. She already understands that, Marcus said. She learned it from watching you. The way you've handled everything that's happened, the way you've protected her while dealing with your own challenges, that's taught her more about strength and character than any classroom lesson ever could. 3 weeks after that life-changing Christmas Eve, Eleanor received a phone call that she had been both anticipating and dreading. Thomas was coming home. His deployment was ending earlier than expected, and he would be arriving at JFK Airport in 5 days. The news filled the apartment with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Zara was ecstatic about seeing her father again, but Eleanor worried about how to explain everything that had happened during his absence. Marcus, who had become a regular presence in their lives, offered to help with whatever they needed. Mrs. Johnson. You're going to tell Thomas about the months you spent homeless, but you're also going to tell him about how you kept Zara safe and educated and loved throughout that entire period, Marcus said, as they discussed the situation. You're going to tell him about your new job and your new home, but most importantly, you're going to tell him about what an incredible daughter he has and what an incredible mother raised him. Eleanor had been working in her new position for 2 weeks, and she was already making significant improvements to security protocols across Marcus's properties. Her combination of practical experience and genuine care for people's well-being was exactly what the company had needed. I'm still nervous, Eleanor admitted. Thomas is going to feel guilty that he wasn't here to help us through the difficult time. And you're going to remind him that he was serving his country, which was exactly where he needed to be, Marcus replied. You're going to tell him that his service gave you and Zara something to be proud of during the hardest months of your lives. Zara, who had been listening to this conversation, looked up from her homework. I'm going to tell Daddy that we had an adventure and that we met the best friend we ever could have asked for. Marcus felt his heart skip at her words. Over the past few weeks, he had indeed become part of their family in ways he had never experienced before. He had attended Zara's online school presentations, helped Eleanor prepare for her new job responsibilities, and discovered the joy of being needed by people who mattered to him. When Thomas's plane landed at JFK, Marcus offered to drive Eleanor and Zara to the airport. As they waited in the arrival area, he could see Eleanor's nervousness increasing. What if he's angry that I didn't tell him about losing our home? What if he thinks I failed him? She asked. Eleanor, Marcus said, using her first name for the first time. Thomas is going to see what I see. He's going to see a woman who sacrificed everything to keep his daughter safe and happy. He's going to see someone who worked multiple jobs while homeless and still maintained professional standards. He's going to see someone who put his child's emotional needs above her own comfort and pride. And he's going to see that his mom is now the boss of lots of buildings, Zara added, which made both adults laugh despite their nervousness. When Thomas finally emerged from the security area, Marcus recognized him immediately. He was a tall, lean man in his early 30s, wearing his dress uniform and carrying a single duffel bag. But what struck Marcus most was how his face transformed the moment he saw Zara running toward him. The reunion between father and daughter was everything Marcus had hoped it would be. Thomas swept Zara up in his arms, spinning her around while she chattered excitedly about everything that had happened during his absence. When he embraced Eleanor, Marcus could see years of worry and separation melting away. "Mom, you look good," Thomas said, holding Eleanor at arm's length to study her face. "Really good. I was worried about how you were handling everything." Eleanor glanced at Marcus, then back at her son. "Thomas, there's someone I want you to meet, and there are some things I need to tell you about what happened while you were gone." As they drove back from the airport, Eleanor told Thomas the complete story: the job loss, the months in the car, the chance encounter with Marcus on Christmas Eve, and everything that had followed. Marcus watched Thomas's face in the rearview mirror, seeing a complex series of emotions as he processed his mother's story. "Mom, why didn't you tell me? I could have sent more money or figured out some other way to help," Thomas said when Eleanor finished. "Because your job was to focus on staying alive and coming home to us," Eleanor replied firmly. "My job was to take care of Zara and make sure she felt loved and secure. We both did our jobs." Thomas was quiet for several minutes. Then, he spoke directly to Marcus. "Mr. Wellington, I don't know how to thank you for what you've done for my family." "Sergeant Johnson, your family saved me as much as I helped them," Marcus replied honestly. "They reminded me what life is actually about. They turned me from a wealthy man who lived alone into someone who's part of a family." That evening, as they sat in Eleanor and Zara's apartment, sharing Thomas's first home-cooked meal in months, Marcus marveled at how completely his life had changed. 3 weeks ago, he had been successful but isolated. Tonight, he was surrounded by people who had become the most important part of his world. "Mr. Marcus," Zara said as they finished dinner, "now that Daddy's home, are you still going to be part of our family?" Marcus looked around the table at the 3 people who had transformed his understanding of what success actually meant. "Zara, if you'll have me, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Thomas nodded slowly. "Mr. Wellington, my mother tells me you've given her a job that allows her to use all her skills and experience. She tells me you've provided a home where my daughter feels safe and happy. And Zara tells me you've become the family friend she's always wanted. That makes you family as far as I'm concerned." 6 months later, Marcus stood in the conference room of his company headquarters, looking out at a group of employees he had never really seen before: security guards, maintenance, workers, custodial staff, and building managers from across his property portfolio. Eleanor stood at the front of the room, presenting her comprehensive plan for improving working conditions and career advancement opportunities for all support staff. "What Mrs. Johnson is proposing," Marcus addressed the room, "represents a fundamental shift in how we think about every person who contributes to our company's success. We're not just talking about better wages and benefits, though those are certainly part of the plan. We're talking about recognizing that the people who keep our buildings safe, clean, and functional are skilled professionals who deserve career growth opportunities. The changes that had started with one homeless grandmother and her granddaughter were now affecting hundreds of employees across the city. Eleanor's insights into the challenges faced by service workers had led to the creation of educational programs, promotion pathways, and support services that were transforming lives throughout the organization. "Mr. Wellington," said Maria Santos, a custodial worker from one of the downtown properties, "before Mrs. Johnson became director, nobody ever asked us what we thought about anything. Now she has monthly meetings where she actually listens to our ideas about how to make the buildings better for everyone." Thomas, who had been hired as a security coordinator after completing his military service, spoke up from the back of the room. "What I've learned working here is that my mother and Mr. Wellington have created something special. This isn't just about jobs. It's about building a community where everyone's contribution matters." After the meeting, Marcus found himself reflecting on how profoundly his priorities had changed. His company was more profitable than ever, but, more importantly, it had become the kind of workplace he was proud to lead. Employee turnover had decreased dramatically, productivity had increased, and the company had gained a reputation as one of the best employers in the city. That evening, Marcus joined the Johnson family for their weekly dinner, a tradition that had developed naturally over the months. These dinners had become the highlight of his week, providing him with the sense of belonging and purpose that he had never found in business success alone. "Mr. Marcus," Zara said as she helped clear the table, "my teacher wants to know if you'll come speak to our class about entrepreneurship." "I'd be honored," Marcus replied. "What would you like me to tell them?" "Tell them about how you learned that being rich isn't the same as being successful?" Zara said with the wisdom that continued to amaze him. "Tell them about how Grandma Ellie taught you that the most important thing is taking care of people." Eleanor smiled at her granddaughter's words. "Marcus, do you remember what you said to me that first night about recognizing value in unexpected places?" "I do. I think what happened to all of us is that we learned to see each other clearly. You saw that Thomas and I weren't just people who needed help. We were people with something valuable to offer. And we saw that you weren't just a wealthy man who lived alone. You were someone who was ready to be part of something bigger than yourself." Thomas nodded in agreement. "What I find remarkable is how one chance encounter has affected so many other people. The employees in your company, the families who've been helped by the new programs, the community organizations you've started, supporting. It's like dropping a stone in a pond." Marcus thought about all the changes that had rippled outward from that Christmas Eve meeting in the lobby. Eleanor's department had identified dozens of employees who were struggling with housing, childcare, or educational barriers. The company had created partnerships with local schools, community colleges, and social service organizations. They had established an emergency fund for employees facing unexpected crises, and they had implemented mentorship programs that paired experienced workers with those just starting their careers. "The thing that amazes me most," Marcus said, "is how much there was that I never saw before. I lived in that building for 3 years, and I never really noticed the people who made it possible for me to live comfortably and safely. I never thought about whether they had safe places to live or whether their children were getting good educations." "That's not unusual," Eleanor said gently. "Most people don't see past their own immediate concerns. What makes you different is that once you did see, you chose to act." "And what makes you extraordinary," Marcus replied, "is that you maintained your dignity and professionalism and love for your family even when you were facing circumstances that would have broken many people." Zara, who had been listening to this conversation while pretending to focus on her homework, looked up with a question. "Do you think Daddy's letters would have found me even if we hadn't met Mr. Marcus?" It was Thomas who answered. "Baby girl, my letters would have found you no matter what, because love always finds a way. But meeting Mr. Marcus meant that when I came home, I found my family not just surviving, but thriving. And that's a gift I'll never stop being grateful for. 1 year after that transformative Christmas Eve, Marcus found himself once again in the lobby of his residential building. But this time he wasn't alone, and he wasn't returning from a business trip that had left him feeling empty and disconnected. This time, he was accompanied by Eleanor, Thomas, and Zara, who were helping him set up for a small celebration he had organized for the building's staff. The marble floors were now decorated with tables of food, and the usually quiet lobby buzzed with conversation and laughter. "Mr. Wellington," said James Chen, the building manager, "I have to say this past year has been remarkable. The staff morale is higher than it's ever been, and the residents have noticed the improvement in service quality." "That's all Mrs. Johnson's doing," Marcus replied, watching Eleanor coordinate the evening's activities with her characteristic blend of authority and warmth. "She's created systems and standards that bring out the best in everyone." As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself talking with staff members he had never really known before. There was Patricia, the daytime security guard who was completing her bachelor's degree through the company's educational assistance program. There was Miguel, the maintenance supervisor who had been promoted after Eleanor recognized his leadership potential. There was Sarah, the cleaning staff supervisor who had developed new efficiency protocols that had been implemented across all the company's properties. Each person had a story, and each story represented a life that had been positively affected by the changes that began with a little girl looking for her father's letters. "Speech! Speech!" someone called out, and soon the entire group was encouraging Marcus to address the room. Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him, people who had transformed from invisible background figures into friends, colleagues, and extended family members. He thought about how to capture everything that this year had meant to him. "A year ago tonight," he began, "I came home to this building thinking I was successful. I had money, I had a business, I had all the material things that our society tells us represent achievement. But I was also profoundly alone, and I had lost touch with everything that makes life meaningful." He paused, looking at Eleanor, Thomas, and Zara, who were standing together near the front of the group. "That night, I encountered a little girl who was looking for letters from her deployed father. What I discovered was that some of the most remarkable people I would ever meet had been right here all along, working to make my life comfortable and safe while dealing with challenges I couldn't imagine." Marcus's voice grew stronger as he continued. "Eleanor Johnson taught me that dignity isn't about your circumstances. It's about how you handle whatever circumstances you face. Zara Johnson taught me that wisdom doesn't come from age or education. It comes from love and attention and genuine caring about other people. And Thomas Johnson taught me that service to others is the highest calling any of us can answer." The room was completely quiet now, with everyone focused on Marcus's words. "But more than that, this family taught me that success isn't something you achieve alone. Real success comes from building relationships, supporting community, and using whatever resources you have to make life better for the people around you. It comes from seeing and valuing every person who contributes to your world." He gestured toward the assembled group. "Every person in this room makes a difference. Every job you do, every service you provide, every time you go above and beyond what's required, that matters. And I want you to know that you're not just employees or service providers. You're the foundation that makes everything else possible." The applause that followed was warm and genuine, but what meant the most to Marcus was the look of pride and affection on Eleanor, Thomas, and Zara's faces. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself standing in the same spot where he had first encountered Zara a year earlier. The mailbox area looked exactly the same, but everything else in his world had been transformed. "Penny for your thoughts," Eleanor said, joining him near the mailboxes. "I was just thinking about how different everything is from a year ago." Marcus replied. "And how grateful I am that Zara was looking for her father's letters that night." "You know what I think about sometimes?" Eleanor said. "I think about how many other people there are out there, struggling with challenges we can't see, working hard to maintain their dignity while dealing with circumstances beyond their control. I think about how many opportunities there are for people like you, people with resources and influence, to make a real difference." Marcus nodded. "That's actually something I've been thinking about, too. I've been wondering if what we've done here could be replicated in other companies, other communities." "It could," Thomas said, approaching with Zara. "What you've created here is a model for how business success and social responsibility can work together. You've proven that taking care of people is good for everyone involved." Zara, now 10 years old and even more articulate than she had been a year earlier, had her own perspective to offer. "I think what matters most is that you learn to see people, like, really see them. And once you see people clearly, it's impossible not to care about them." As they stood together in that lobby, Marcus realized that the little girl was absolutely right. The transformation that had occurred over the past year hadn't been about charity or even about business improvement. It had been about learning to truly see the people who had always been part of his world. "There's one more thing I want to tell you all," Marcus said. "This year has taught me that family isn't just about blood relationships. Family is about the people who support you, challenge you to be better, and stick with you through whatever comes. You three have become my family, and that's the greatest success I've ever achieved." Eleanor smiled. "Marcus, you became our family. The night you chose to see Zara as a child who needed help instead of a problem to be solved. Everything good that's happened since then has grown from that choice." 2 years later, Marcus's company had become a case study in business schools across the country. The employee-centered policies that Eleanor had pioneered were being studied and implemented by companies nationwide. The comprehensive support, programs, career development initiatives, and community partnerships had not only improved the lives of hundreds of workers, but had also resulted in unprecedented levels of productivity and employee satisfaction. Marcus found himself regularly invited to speak at conferences and corporate leadership events, but he always insisted that Eleanor accompany him as a co-presenter. Her insights into the practical challenges faced by working families and her ability to design systems that addressed those challenges had made her one of the most respected voices in the field of employee relations. "What people don't always understand," Eleanor told an audience of Fortune 500 executives, "is that when you invest in your employees' success, you're not just being charitable. You're building a stronger, more stable, more innovative organization. People who feel valued and supported don't just work harder, they work smarter." Thomas had completed his degree in business management through the company's educational assistance program and had been promoted to regional security director. His military experience, combined with his natural leadership abilities and his deep understanding of the company's values, made him invaluable in training and developing security personnel across all properties. Zara, now in 6th grade, had become something of a celebrity in her school for her articulate presentations about family, community, and social responsibility. Teachers regularly invited her to share her perspectives on topics ranging from military families to homelessness to the importance of intergenerational relationships. "My grandmother always says that circumstances don't define you. Your choices do," Zara told her social studies class during a unit on community service. "When we were living in a car, we could have chosen to be angry or to give up. Instead, Grandma chose to keep working hard and to make sure I knew I was loved. And when Mr. Marcus found us, he could have chosen to just feel sorry for us or to ignore us. Instead, he chose to see us as people who had something valuable to offer." Marcus, who had been invited to observe the class presentation, found himself once again amazed by the wisdom and maturity that Zara displayed. She had grown into a confident, articulate young woman who understood that her experiences had given her unique insights into the world. After the presentation, Zara's teacher approached Marcus. Mr. Wellington, I have to tell you that Zara's perspectives have enriched our entire classroom community. She has a way of helping other students think more deeply about complex social issues. She's learned from the best teacher, Marcus replied, watching Eleanor help Zara pack up her presentation materials. Her grandmother has shown all of us how to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. That evening, as the four of them shared dinner in Eleanor and Zara's apartment, the same apartment where they had first celebrated Christmas morning 2 years earlier, Marcus reflected on how completely his understanding of success had evolved. "I got a call today from the mayor's office," he announced. "They want to create a citywide initiative based on what we've done with our employee support programs. They're calling it the Comprehensive Worker Success Initiative, and they want Eleanor to head up the task force." Eleanor looked surprised. "Marcus, that's a huge responsibility, and it would mean working with dozens of different companies and organizations. It would also mean that hundreds of thousands of workers and their families could benefit from the programs you've developed," Thomas pointed out. "Mom, you have the opportunity to influence policy and practice across the entire city." "What do you think, Grandma Ellie?" Zara asked. "Do you want to be the boss of helping people all over the city?" Eleanor laughed at her granddaughter's way of framing the opportunity. "Zara, it's not about being the boss of anything. It's about sharing what we've learned and helping other people create supportive communities in their own workplaces." "Then you should definitely do it," Zara said, with certainty. "Because that's what families do. They help other families." Marcus looked around the table at the people who had taught him everything important he had learned about life, success, and human connection. "Eleanor, if you decide to take on this role, you'll have the full support of our company, and you'll have the benefit of working with people who understand that real success comes from lifting others up." "I think I'd like to try," Eleanor said slowly. "But I want to make sure that we don't lose what we've built here. This company, this community we've created, that has to remain strong." "It will," Thomas assured her. "What we've built here isn't dependent on any one person. It's become part of the culture, part of how people think about work and community and taking care of each other." As they talked about the future, about Eleanor's potential new role, about Thomas's continued growth within the company, about Zara's education and dreams, Marcus felt a deep sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with financial success or business achievement. "There's something I want to say to all of you," Marcus said as the evening drew to a close. 2 years ago, I thought I understood what it meant to be successful. I had built a business, accumulated wealth, achieved everything that society told me to pursue. But I was essentially living in a bubble, isolated from real human connection and genuine purpose. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. "You didn't just change my circumstances. You changed who I am. You taught me that success without relationship is meaningless. You taught me that wealth without generosity is empty. Most importantly, you taught me that the people who seem to have the least to offer often have the most to teach." Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "Marcus, what you learned is something that many people never discover. You learned that we're all connected, that taking care of each other isn't just morally right, it's practically smart. You learned that when you invest in people's success, everyone benefits. And you learned that families come in all different forms," Zara added. "Sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, not the ones you're born into." Thomas nodded in agreement. "What I find most remarkable is how one chance encounter, one decision to see people clearly and respond with generosity, created ripple effects that are still spreading. The employees whose lives have been changed, the families who've been helped, the other companies that are now implementing similar programs. It's like that stone in the pond that we talked about, but the ripples just keep expanding." As Marcus drove home to his penthouse that night, he realized that while his living situation hadn't changed dramatically, his experience of home had been completely transformed. He was no longer returning to an isolated space where he lived. alone with his success. He was returning to his part of a community that extended far beyond his apartment walls. The mailbox area in the lobby still looked exactly as it had that Christmas Eve 2 years earlier. But now, when Marcus passed those bronze slots, he didn't see just a functional building amenity. He saw the place where his real life had begun, the place where he had encountered a little girl looking for letters from her father and had discovered that the most important letters he would ever receive were the ones that taught him about love, family, and genuine success. 5 years after that transformative Christmas Eve, Marcus stood once again in a building lobby, but this time it was the lobby of the new Community Resource Center that his foundation had built in partnership with the city. The center provided job training, childcare, educational support, and emergency assistance to working families throughout the metropolitan area. Eleanor, now the director of the city's Comprehensive Worker Success Initiative, was addressing a crowd of community leaders, business executives, and families who had been helped by the programs that had grown from a chance encounter with a homeless grandmother and her granddaughter. When people ask me how we've been able to create such successful programs, Eleanor told the audience, I tell them that it starts with seeing people clearly. It starts with understanding that everyone has something valuable to contribute, regardless of their current circumstances. And it starts with recognizing that strong communities are built on relationships, not just resources. Thomas, now the director of security operations for Marcus's expanded company, had brought his own family to the celebration. He had married a teacher he met through the community college program, and they had 2 young children who called Eleanor Great-Grandma Ellie and considered Marcus their honorary uncle. Zara, now 15 and a sophomore in high school, had become a powerful advocate for young people in difficult circumstances. She regularly spoke at schools and community events, sharing her perspective on resilience, family, and the importance of maintaining hope, even in challenging situations. 5 years ago, my grandmother and I were living in a car, Zara told the audience during her portion of the program. We were homeless, but we were never hopeless, because we had each other and we had faith that things could get better. What we learned is that sometimes the best thing that can happen to you is meeting someone who sees your potential instead of just your problems. Marcus, watching from the side of the room, felt the same sense of amazement that had characterized his relationship with the Johnson family from the beginning. Zara had grown into a remarkable young woman whose experiences had given her wisdom and compassion that far exceeded her years. After the formal program ended, the 4 of them found a quiet corner where they could talk without being interrupted by the well-wishers and colleagues who wanted to congratulate them on their success. Marcus, Eleanor said, do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't decided to approach Zara that night instead of just calling security? I think about it all the time, Marcus replied. I think about how close I came to missing the most important encounter of my life. I think about how many other opportunities I probably missed because I wasn't paying attention to the people around me. But you did pay attention when it mattered, Thomas pointed out. And that changed everything for all of us. Zara, who was now taller than her grandmother and bore an increasing resemblance to her late mother, had her own perspective on their journey. I think what's most amazing is how many other families have been helped because of what happened to us. Like, our story became bigger than just us. She was right. The programs that had begun with Marcus's desire to help Eleanor and Zara had now assisted thousands of families. The employee support initiatives had been adopted by hundreds of companies. The Community Resource Center served over 5,000 people annually, and the model they had developed was being replicated in cities across the country. There's something I've been wanting to tell all of you, Marcus said. Next month, I'm being recognized by the National Business Leadership Association for the company's employee-centered policies and community partnerships, but I'm not accepting the award alone. I've insisted that Eleanor be recognized as co-recipient, because none of this would have been possible without her insights and leadership. Eleanor looked surprised. Marcus, that's incredibly generous, but those policies grew out of your willingness to invest in people and your commitment to creating meaningful change. They grew out of your wisdom about what working families actually need, Marcus replied. They grew out of your ability to design systems that address real problems. And they grew out of your refusal to accept that people should have to choose between working hard and living with dignity. As they continued talking about their shared journey and their plans for the future, Marcus reflected on how completely his understanding of wealth, success, and happiness had evolved. 5 years earlier, he had measured his worth in terms of financial assets and business achievements. Now, he understood that real wealth came from relationships, real success came from contribution to community, and real happiness came from being part of something larger than himself. The little girl who had been looking for her father's letters had become a young woman who understood that the most important communications were the ones that connected people across differences of circumstance and experience. The grandmother, who had maintained her dignity while homeless, had become a leader whose insights were transforming the way society thought about work, family, and community support. And the billionaire who had once lived in isolation had learned that the greatest fortune anyone could accumulate was the love and respect of people who mattered, and the knowledge that his life had made a positive difference in the world. As they prepared to leave the Community Resource Center that evening, Marcus took one last look around the building that represented the concrete expression of everything they had learned together. The walls were covered with photos and testimonials from families who had been helped, workers who had found new opportunities, and children who had been given hope for their futures. "Thank you," he said quietly to Eleanor, Thomas, and Zara. "Thank you for teaching me what success actually means. Thank you for showing me that the best business decisions are the ones that help people build better lives. And thank you for making me part of your family." "Thank you for seeing us," Eleanor replied. "Thank you for choosing to help instead of looking away. And thank you for proving that wealth and compassion can work together to create real change." Zara, who had the last word as she so often did, summed up their entire journey with characteristic insight. "Thank you for showing me that the best stories are the ones where everybody wins in the end." As they walked out into the December night, 5 years after a chance encounter had changed all of their lives, Marcus realized that Zara was absolutely right. This was indeed a story where everybody had won: the employees whose working conditions had improved, the families who had been helped, the community that had been strengthened, and most of all, the 4 people who had learned that real success comes not from what you accumulate for yourself, but from what you build together with others. Thank you for watching Black Reflection. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of human connection across all communities, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that celebrate the strength, dignity, and resilience found in every neighborhood and every family. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing how these stories impact your own perspective on community and compassion. Until next time, remember that the most powerful changes often begin with simply choosing to truly see the people around us.